Hey, everybody. Welcome to Age Blind. This is our first Salt Box of 2026. Salt Box standing for Sex, Life, and Tech. And we are completely age blind, as the name infers or implies, that my guests are of all generations, of various locations, of various backgrounds, and our focus is on what we have in common as opposed to what divides us. So today's topic is goal setting and how to get shit done that you set out to do. Interestingly, the second Friday of every year is known as Quitter's Day because that is when people start bailing on their resolutions. So that's clearly a problem. What we're going to focus on is how to set goals that really are achievable. I coined the phrase this year, MGs or micro goals, which also is like milligrams or the little cars. And how do you set small goals that are actually achievable? So let's go around the room one at a time. First of all, I also want to thank the building I live in, the Ave, because they gave me this lovely furnished apartment as my recording studio today. And if any of you happen to be coming into Phoenix or have guests from out of town, you could stay in a place like this. You can't see it, but it is beautifully furnished. And I may just hang out here for the rest of the day as opposed to my real apartment in the building. But anyway, that's my little hype for the Ave, and let's just dive in. We're going to go around the room, and each of my guests is going to state their name, talk very briefly about how they know me, what they do for a living, and what micro goals they've set for 2026. So let's start with you, Corbin. How you know me, what you do, and what are some of your micro goals for this year?
100%. So I met Nancy about a year ago, probably almost to this day, in a co-working space that we both shared an office with. She was walking by and saw some of these like magazines that I had on my walls and introduced herself to me, and we kicked it off right from the beginning and had a few phone calls after that and kind of just kicked off a really cool relationship, working together and just getting to know each other. And moving through 2020, it was the micro goals first, right?
Well, what is it you do for a living?
I'm a videographer, so I run a video production company, and we're heavily focused on stories and how sharing the stories create an impact for the people you're trying to reach. And we believe that the best way to build connection with your audience is through connection through stories. It's been one of the longest running connection points in human history, so I think it's a pretty good track record. And so some of the things I'm working on this year, I made a very big list of micro goals for my year. I did a bingo card with 25 different squares on it, and I made a big 16 by 20-inch poster that sits on my fridge, and it has check boxes and it has lines and things. And so one of the things I'm doing is reading 27 books. I'm one in, and I've got a list on my fridge that I write out every book. I rate it. I'm working on writing 200 morning pages. So that's a habit that I've been working on for the past 36 days. This is day 36 of getting up every morning and writing for my first part of my morning, which is the creativity exercise. And so I have little check boxes for that. And every morning I check that off. And those are some of the micro goals to get me to my bigger things.
Love
And
that. And I think it's really
yeah.
interesting that you have analog systems rather than digital systems, which is
Mhm.
something that I personally have been very involved in this year, the whole balance between bodies and bots, which is the name of my new Substack series. But you have to like, and I personally believe that with goal setting, analog systems can be as powerful as digital because they're in your face. Janine, thank you. Thank you, Corbin. That's great. Janine, what about you?
So Nancy, you and I met, and it was a couple of years ago around this time, a national publication asked me to write an article about ageism in online dating. I consider myself an expert in ageism, but absolutely not in online dating, and ended up reaching out to you through social media. You gave me great quotes, and I think we've been allies in fighting ageism ever since, and so appreciate you as a collaborator. What do I do? So part of what I do is the big broad umbrella is addressing ageism directed against both younger and older people. But the work I do involves kind of three buckets of activity. So for people who are more experienced, work with them on thinking through encore paths. How do you use your experience, insight, connections to build an encore business? I also speak and lead workshops for employers on the very strong business case for older workers and intergenerational teams. And because I think public policy is so important and public policies in this area are terrible, I spend a lot of time championing public policies that don't put limitations on people based on age. So that kind of leads to my big 2026 project. And so I'm going to say it's a macro project, but then I broke it down into micro goals. The macro project is this: I want to do a book, a mini podcast series, and a series of courses elevating the idea of women's entrepreneurship. So telling the stories of women who have started businesses after age 50. I did that because when I plotted into 5 different AI models for an article I was writing, give me a picture of an entrepreneur. All of them were young men with spiky hair sitting in a coffee shop. None of them were older. None of them were women. And I was like, okay, I want to change the narrative about this. And I also believe, I mean, Harris poll showed in the last few months, 83% of people in the US are thinking of starting their own business. So I'm calling this project of mine, Build Your Own Boat. And the metaphor is this: we've got the economy is rocky, we've got really turbulent waters, we've got ageism surrounding us. And how do we encourage people and give them inspiration, hope, and how to on how to kind of literally build their own boat? So, my micro goals: I am setting aside a certain, like Corbin, a certain amount of time every single day to write X number of words. And Corbin, I too am analog. I'm checking off the list. Okay, I got that number of words. I am reaching out to X number of women every day who I think have started their businesses after 50 and saying, will you be part of my project? And I'm learning different podcasting, which is why I'm really interested in Riverside that you're using. So those are kind of my micro goals. And I'm absolutely checking an analog. I have 3, and this is how bad it is. I have 3 separate notebooks, one for each element of it. I
But
think the
that's a good tip. I mean, I have a notebook that I divide into 3 columns every week. It's self-care, passions, and things that make money. And
yeah,
so that's my system of tracking against my MGs. And as long as there's one thing in every column, I feel like I'm doing okay. Because if you do 3 things a day that span those categories, just do the
yeah,
math. How many things is that you've accomplished by the end of the year? So
yeah.
that's great, Janine. And I was 48, but if you are willing to round up, I would love to be.
I'm willing to round up, and I'm also interviewing a few women who are, like, kind of mid-40s, so you are in, my friend, and you'll probably
Yay,
be
woohoo,
people I interview.
collab. Love that. All right, Peter, you're next.
I'm Peter Rivera. I've been a personal trainer, strength coach for over 30 years. Originally from New York, born in the South Bronx. Live in Scottsdale, Arizona now. I'm in the biohacking space or longevity space, whatever name you want to give it. I work in peptides, so I'm a peptide specialist. And what I don't do goals, and it sounds weird to say, I don't do micro goals, I don't do macro goals. But what I do is I say, I want to be 1% better today than I was yesterday. And that can
Love that.
mean in anything. So that can mean in whether, I had a better workout than the day before, or I got to help, 3 people out instead of 2 people, so just building on that. And that's kind of always been my long-term goal. Being in the fitness industry, there's so many people that have these goals and they sit back and they say, well, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. And then they go to the gym 5 days that first week. And then the second week they go 4. And then they feel like a failure. And then they go 3. So I've evolved my mentality or my thought process into not believing in successes or failures. It is what it is. So it's either it's a positive thing, or it's a thing moving to a positive thing. So being negative or missing a goal is not an option, but just getting better 1% every day, I'm moving in a direction that positively affects not only myself, but other people. So that's kind of where my goals line up.
Well, that's great that you said that, Peter. And that's actually very funny because I had been in a minor car accident on Saturday night. My sleep that night was terrible. So Peter and I were texting yesterday, and I sent him my sleep scores for my Aura ring and said, woohoo, I'm up from 64 to 94. It's a good day. So yes, I love that philosophy, Peter, and I think I'm going to start building that into my own life and my own process. So thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome.
last but not least, and Peter and I met because
Yes.
he interviewed me on somebody else's podcast, which as soon as we work out the technical problems, I'll be posting on my social media. But he is an amazing moderator, host. If you and I ever had a show together, Peter, it would be fire, the Peter and Nancy show, because we
Oh my God, it
align
would
on
be.
so many things. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a great interview, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was an honor to be able to host you that day and get to meet you and find out who you were and everything and be invited to do this today. So, thank you for having me on.
And last but not least, the fabulous Jim McGrew. How did we meet? What are you up to? And you have a very interesting story because you retired from your day job in the US government and are kind of, what's the word that you use? Your encore. I love that, Janine. Encore roadmap is one of Janine's terms. So, Jim, talk about your encore roadmap and your micro goal.
Yeah, it's fabulous, but not capital letters. So, uh, Nancy and I met about 2 years ago online dating. I'm in the East Coast. I'm near DC and she's in Phoenix and she was visiting her family in the East Coast and her phone was here and somehow bingo bango, she popped up and I thought, wow, I need to meet this lady. Reading her bio, so interesting. And I could tell she had zing and zest. And I thought, well, I'll meet her. And as she teases me all the time, it's my radius as far as dating is 30 seconds or 30 minutes or whatever. So
Yes, I
that's how
call
we
him
met.
30 Mile McGrew.
We realized that we're both uh, interesting and we have a lot of things to say about a lot of things. So we've collaborated a little bit on her dating book and all that. So I'm retired. I retired 2 years ago. I was 40 years in corporate finance, most of the time in Southern California. And then I moved here in 14 years ago to be a budget analyst for the federal government. And I'm the luckiest, I tell people I'm the luckiest guy in the world. It's all worked out. So I retired a couple years ago and I traveled a lot after I would call it graduating, retiring. And then a year and a half ago, I decided to get to learn ballroom dancing. So that's my thing. That's my passion. 3 or 4 nights a week, I go to Arthur Nuri Studios locally here in Chevy Chase, Bethesda, and great people, wonderful culture. And I'm learning about, I would say, 11 different types of dance. And so I'm a first grader and I'm enthusiastically functional, but the way I say it, my foxtrot is not that foxy yet. Yeah. So that's one goal. And through that, I'm not looking to get trophies and all that stuff. It's just more of a social thing and it's a lot of fun. We all need community. We know that. That's just basically, we all need community. Some people do synagogues and churches and all this and that, but my community is that. So then succinctly, as far as goals, I may want to move out of this nice place I'm in now one of these days. So I have got to minimalize. I have got to get that second bedroom from being a dysfunctional man cave / closet / hazmat situation into minimalizing and all that. So my little micro goal is to make that better. And I know it's a heavy lift, as they say. And I got a plan, and I'll tell you when asked.
I also know a great, and we've talked about it on the show, and actually Betsy has been a guest on my podcast. She works out of the Maryland, D.C. area. It's a company called Clutterbusters. She comes in and babysits people while they're downsizing. And I just went, as many of you know, I went through a huge downsizing before I moved in July. And it was mentally and physically one of the best things I could have ever done. Because when you, Marie Kondo your life and you get rid of all your crap, it frees up so much space in your time and your head to do other things. And here's an interesting statistic. Only 6% of people over the age of 65 move because it does seem really daunting. But as somebody who did it, it was so liberating. And I would gladly, I don't want to move again in a year, but I could move again in a year because I don't have that much baggage, literally and figuratively. So it can really change your life once you get rid of your stuff and realize that most of what you carry around is in your head and your heart and on your laptop and your phone. And beyond that, there's not a whole lot that you really need in life, being very philosophical and poetic. We all have our slumpy days. We're recording this on January 20th. And I would say out of the 20 days so far in 2026, I probably have had 2 days where I woke up in the morning with either negative self talk or procrastination or just in a slump. What advice do you have to our listeners of what they can do to keep going when they hit those slumps? And again, we're going to do this as a round robin. And then when you finish giving your tidbits of advice, if you could also give our viewing and listening audience a way to reach you if they're interested in buying what you're selling or hearing more about you or just having you as part of their community. Hit it, Corbin.
Yeah, this is something that I've done a lot of thinking about this year and last year and just in general. But I mean, having goals and like having things that you're after and believing that every day you're going to wake up with so much excitement is just like, it's not going to happen. You're going to have days where you wake up and you're like, I don't want to go for a run this morning. I don't want to write my morning pages. So, what I've identified for myself as kind of like a framework that I go through is how can I make it easy? How can I make it worthwhile? And how can I build evidence moving forward? Making it easy is like, I'm also training for a 10K. That's one of my goals. It's okay if I go for a 15-minute run. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes, 40 minutes of running in the morning. It's okay to be a 15-minute run. Making it worthwhile. My checklists are part of that, and making it so that it's gamified is a big thing for me.
I was
I
going to ask
love
if
to
you
have things.
reward yourself if you
I
accomplish a
do.
goal. Do
I
you
do.
treat yourself
Most
to
of
a
my
cookie?
goals are gamified. So I have a couple of games that I'm playing with myself right now that when I reach them, I give myself a reward. And sometimes that reward is something really simple. Sometimes it's something big that I've been wanting. And so I make it worthwhile. And then the last thing is just building evidence. So that's usually my morning pages. If I had a particularly rough day, I'll write about that and I'll write about like, okay, here's the things that I did do. And as you build evidence for yourself, you show yourself, okay, I've done this before. I can do this moving forward. And it makes it so much easier to jump out of bed. And then the big thing too is just like, I write myself a note card and put it over my alarm clock every single morning. And I write on that like something to get me motivated for the day. So it's something I want to write about, something I want to do. And by doing that, instead of hitting the snooze button, I read that note and then I turn on my light and I get going for the day. And that's how I keep myself going. And that's how I
I
kind of
love
get through those mornings that feel a little bit sluggish and like I don't want to be doing it.
love that, Corbin. Love it. Yeah, something I've been doing is also shrinking myself a little bit, going, all right, what did put me in this slump? And do I need to work on that thing that happened, that bruise that I got, or the thing that someone said to me yesterday, or the night's sleep that set me off kilter? And is there something I could do to cure the cause of what's getting me into that slump or that hidey hole? Janine, what about you? What can you tell our listeners and viewers about
Yeah.
how to de-slump?
So first, yes to everything you said, Corbin, especially the rewards. I'm a big believer in like, okay, got that done. I'm going shopping. But one of the things I live by, I call it the potato chip rule. In science, it's called implementation intention. So anticipating ahead of time what might derail you and what might get in your way. I generally eat really healthy, but if a bag of potato chips walks into my house, usually accompanied by my husband or one, I can't resist. The fact that he is tall and I'm short, it's like, okay, get on a ladder, put the bag of potato chips somewhere I am not going to reach it. And so we're not relying on willpower, right? We're designing our environment. So that's one of the things I try to do. And I actually encourage when I'm encouraging people to do encore pursuits anticipate, list everything that might get in the way, and think ahead of time about what you're going to do about it. So, don't let the chips win is my motto. How to get hold of me? If you are interested, so there are two reasons to get hold of me right now. If you are a woman, mid 40s, I'm extending it, Nancy, mid 40s or older who has started a new entrepreneurship venture, get hold of me. The best way to get hold of me on LinkedIn. The other reason is I am launching a series of courses on how people who are dealing with this fraught job market, if you're tired of it, if you want to work, how you can use your experience, your insight, and connections to launch a pretty successful consulting practice. So that course is launching mid-February. And the best way to find out about it is follow me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn Janine Vander.
Corbin, just backtracking a minute, can you just tell people how to get a hold of you if they want your
Yeah.
video services?
100%. Yeah, you can find me at k27media.com, the letter K, numbers 27media.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on social media. I'm rarely on it, so I probably have like 100 LinkedIn requests just sitting that I haven't seen. I apologize, I'm just not I'm just not in that world. So yeah, just shoot me an email, corbin@k27media.com, and you can find me that way.
Yeah, and Corbin has shot my content multiple times. And those of you who know me know that I have very, very high standards. And so every month, Corbin is my first message to say, are you free to shoot me this week? And I'm blessed this month. I'm actually getting the great Corbin behind the camera. So thank you, Corbin. Peter,
Yeah.
motivational tips and how
Yeah.
people can get a hold of you.
Sounds like my whole life. So being a trainer, it's really hard not to be motivating. You have your moments where you may not self-start right away, but for me, it's kind of easy and that's just built into my system. But I can tell you that Culture Club is a great way to go if you've got head noise and you need to stop those negative thoughts or sing Karma Chameleon. That makes you forget everything and you'll sing that song all day long. And it just puts you just in such a great mood. I'm a big Bruce Lee person's, paraphrasing his quote on being like water. Water can flow or it can crash. It can take any form. So every day be like water. Some days you're flowing, other days you're crashing, but just always be moving. You can reach me at Responsible Peptides at outlook.com. You can contact me myself, 480, if you're in the longevity health span or interested in anything in that, and I can direct you and help you out and guide you that way. Also, fitness advice is free.
Yeah. And one of the things, Peter, if I have a day where, I've been kind of a sloth or a slug, I can always just plank for 30 seconds or a minute while I'm watching TV, while the commercial is on. That was a trick that one of my old trainers gave me. It's like, you don't need any equipment. There's a commercial anyway that you're not going to listen to or watch. So just
Right.
get off your ass and plank for 30 seconds, a minute,
Yeah.
and as to your point earlier, one day you plank for 30 seconds, the next day you plank for 31. Before you know it, I had a former boss in his 80s who was planking for 8, 9 minutes.
Yep.
Plank away, boys and girls. Jim, words of wisdom of staying motivated, not procrastinating.
Sure. So one of the things I realize about me is that I'm really not a linear person. It's hard for me to do one thing for 3 hours and stay on track. And I've learned to be okay with that I'm constantly doing numerous things. And interestingly enough, at the end of the day or the end of the 2 hours or something, I've got a few things done. So in a sense, there's being comfortable with one's style is important. Some of us, we kind of idolize the person who could do one thing for 4 hours. It's just not me. First of all, I feel more organized just hearing you guys, and I feel healthier hearing Peter. So that's a good thing.
And read about peptides. I know, Jim, you do a lot of reading. I've been following Peter on social media. I have got, as you said, I've gotten peppier just reading about peptides, but it's fascinating stuff, especially as it relates to longevity.
I think it's important everybody kind of figure out where their own motivation is. And maybe it's even helpful to just do a Google search on the word motivation, which I did 2 hours ago, thinking, because the way you do goals is motivation. And there's all kinds of things, but the way I clean my house is being motivated by fear. If someone's coming over, it's a fear of embarrassment. It's not that clean as I'm looking around, but when somebody's coming over, it gets clean. By the time they show up, it's like, oh my God, I pulled it off. It's nice. Another little thing, remember that crazy movie, I think it was called What About Bob, with Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray? And Bill Murray's character was absolutely a mess. And Richard Dreyfuss was the one that thought he had it all together and then it flip-flop. But the whole deal was baby steps. Just be okay with baby steps. So that terrible room back there, my second bedroom, which is a hazmat deal, little baby steps. So visualizing, I can start there. So baby steps and actually visualizing, sitting in the easy chair, but watching yourself sort of in your head, walk over and pick up that stuff and do it. So yeah. Now, the way they can reach me is through Nancy. Nancy and I talk every week, just collaborating on something. I'm retired. I have nothing to sell. I am an evangelist for this book, though. That's my thing. Sapiens by Harari. A lot of people know that book. So no, I'm not selling anything. I'm not an influencer. I finally realized long ago, if no one's behind me, I'm not much of a leader.
Although you're selling yourself short, Jim. Jim and I are wired very differently. He worked for 40 years as a budget analyst, and I'm a free spirit hippie chick creative. But when I was getting ready to write my dating book, Jim was such an inspiration because his brain is wired very, very differently from mine. And I had 17 criteria. Jim had 55 criteria that fell into categories. And I actually included both of our systems in my book. So I could not have written my book without Jim's perspective. And I think that's something that I've learned as I approach my 7th trip around the sun, which is that you could have very strong opinions and you could be a lone wolf and you could be, a champion of things, but you need to have and the term came up throughout our conversation. You also need to build a community of people who inspire you, who bring you joy, who motivate you. And so that would be my last tidbit of advice. If you don't have that, to use one of Jim's favorite analogies, you're the CEO of your own life, and you need to build a board of advisors around you that are really going to be those people who sometimes call you out on your shit and say, no, I think you're wrong. And you have to talk that through, because true progress and evolution really comes from having a circle around you that is different from you in many ways, which is a great way to wrap up, because the whole theory of age blind is stop paying attention to the effing date on somebody's birth certificate and instead look at them and say, what do we have in common? What don't we have in common that could make them a good collaborator or supporter? And that includes humans as well as AI agents who now have a seat at the table, and use that wisdom, that group wisdom, to make your life better. So there will be a salt box every month throughout 2026. If you would like to be a guest, please reach out to me. There is a Google form, but just shoot me an email at nancyashenker@gmail.com, or comment on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. You could find me as nancyaf_ on Instagram, or nancyaf.com. That is my alter ego unplugged persona. And my marketing company, if you do need marketing help, either building your brand, creating a business plan, my marketing company is The On Switch, TheOnSwitch. And you could find more than you would ever want to see on those two websites. So thank you to my wonderful guest today. So grateful that you took the time out of the day to record. And remember, to all of you, make a little bit of progress each day, the Peter Rivera philosophy, and use whatever system works for you, analog or digital, and stay positive and be age blind. Peace out.